And we're live.
Excellent. All right, Brandon, we are here. It's deadline day. So it's interesting. I feel like we're getting shaggier and shaggier as we get closer to the deadline here. It's like yesterday's pod with Dave. I thought was a lot of fun. Actually, I definitely sort of inspired a lot of tinkers in my own team, and I know it did for you as well. And so I think that there's lots for us to discuss here. And of course, it's deadline day right now, right? So
Yes.
we've got our, I've got a bunch of feeds going here just to make sure we don't miss anything because that's
Yeah, I was
my
gonna
big
pull
worry
up
now.
a nameless like live stream. I was watching a live stream. Well, whatever. I was watching Andy. Let's talk FPL. I was watching his live stream last game week one deadline, and that's where the Saliba Gabriel news started to break.
Yep.
So it's good to vary your sources. Welcome all Patreon supporters. You only need us.
Yeah.
Without us, you are nothing. Is my message to you.
Yeah. Well, okay. So here's the question. I guess the question is, um, we're 90 minutes away from the deadline. Now, of course, you and I we can tinker and change and keep making changes as long as we want. And to a certain degree, on some level, it's like you keep waiting for that perfect squad that just like solves all your problems, right? Answers
Yes.
every question, leaves no highly owned player out of your squad. It's like it's the impossible dream, right? And I sort of actually had a team that I really liked last night. And then you go to bed, and then I woke up this morning. I was like, oh right, the reason it works is because I got rid of every Liverpool player, and I was like, maybe do I actually want to do that or not? And so I tinkered again this morning, and for me, the big news was Rodri. Maybe this was well known. I don't know, but I didn't know that Rodri was like for sure going to be out this weekend, and as a result of that, I just got a little less enthusiastic about Gvardiol, right? Like, I mean, Rodri is just really the even though he's a defensive midfielder, he's sort of the key to the defense, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so without him, I felt a little better about just going without him. In which case, it effectively frees up 1 or 1.5 million. And I sort of found a way to kind of talk myself out of Eze as well. And I got a team that I think I like a lot. I think makes a lot more sense. And so I'll share that in a second. But I actually think you're the one who has made some more extreme changes. And so maybe,
Yeah.
oh wait, and I'm sorry, before we even get to our team, sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second there because I'm again, there's so much going on right now with the deadline coming. But
Everyone's a ball
yeah.
of nerves right now.
Exactly. So what would we find out though in the next 90 minutes, right? Like realistically, right?
Yeah.
Like obviously like some bomb could drop. Oh, so and so broke like Oscar Bob broke his leg. I mentioned if that broke like right now, right? It'd be chaotic.
It would be.
Yeah. But like I guess it'd be Man United team news. Maybe Fulham too. Like if we found out that Emile Smith Rowe was
Mm-hmm.
coming off the bench to start the season, which is possible for game
Yes.
week one, I guess. Unlikely, but possible.
Right.
Things like that could make some changes. Anything else you could think of that would?
Yeah, I think
Yep.
it is weirdly Fulham is the only bomb that could drop
Yeah.
because it just doesn't feel like last season. Arsenal was in a unique position at the start of last season where they were just kind of coming into their own as an
Yeah.
elite Premier League side, and so
Yep.
their lineup
Oops.
was like critical to our fantasy teams. I don't see any teams like that. Like nobody's really with the Oscar Bob thing out of the way. Nobody's taking any big risks with Man City.
Yep.
Okay, Liverpool, I guess, is that team. Liverpool is the Arsenal this season of new manager, unclear about the lineups. If there is a Liverpool in the know account, maybe that's something that breaks in the next
Yeah.
hour.
That is the one thing I think I'm willing to just kind of go with it. But the one thing that does give me a little pause is Jota for sure the starting forward, right? Or was it more, is it more that that Darwin just wasn't ready because of his late return from Copa America, right? We know that Darwin had sort of lost his spot with Klopp, but new manager, right? Like, is there a chance that Jota's at risk of not starting this weekend? I guess that would be one
Yeah,
thing that,
sure.
yeah,
Yeah, that is a good theoretical thing or hypothetical. Jota was with Portugal at the Euro, so yeah, a little closer to home, but
yeah,
I don't see him as it being in a completely different boat than Darwin. So anyway, yeah, and Kwanzaa. We need to talk a little bit about Kwanzaa. I've got a
Kwanzaa.
list of players
Okay.
that might like weasel their way into my team before the
Okay.
deadline.
Yeah, I like it because your team is getting closer and closer to mine. And if you added Kwanzaa, we'd be like almost a perfect overlap
Yeah,
of the
right. So
two. Yep.
I'll
Yep.
throw my team up on the
All
screen
right, let's
in
do
a
it.
moment. In a moment, let's do a
Hmm.
little preamble because
Okay.
um, I've been resistant for the entire preseason to this idea, and we talked about this with Dave last night. Of like, you can't have Holland and Salah; it just kind of doesn't work. And I felt like, well, there are enough budget options that I feel great about in terms of their
Yeah.
minutes and their attacking productivity. And it wasn't so much the captaincy discussion that we had with Dave last night, and it was more just the robustness of my team. And I've been
Yeah.
thinking more and more about minutes risks. So when you get down to into that 6 million and below range, uh, you really have to take minutes risks to get uh, like attacking production
Yeah.
is the way I feel. So the big change that is new to Patreon supporters, and I've been posting screens as you have in the Discord.
Yep.
For any newbies, if you go into the Discord, there is a channel for Talk to the Cheaters, and in there's a channel for Josh's team and one for my team. And each game week, we try to post our decision making processes and
Yeah.
screenshots there.
Usually it means I what I like to do is post my team, get comments, and then get massively defensive like immediately, and tell
Yeah.
people to go screw, as
Sure.
quickly as
Oh, yeah.
possible.
It's
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
like, in work, nobody likes the person who just raises a flag but doesn't provide a solution. I don't need
Yeah.
problems. I need solutions. Okay.
Right. Right. Yeah, exactly. I don't want any response that ends in a question mark.
Yeah.
Like, don't you think so and so? And it's
Yeah.
like, no, I don't think that. Otherwise, I would have done that.
Sure.
It's
Or like, and listen, our lovely patrons are actually listening, and we shouldn't,
it's a patriotic. No, I get that. No, I'm
we're
not
putting the
negging
patron
anybody
in
here. Yeah. Yeah.
paid Patreon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so let me put my team up. Enough discursive sort of
Yeah. Yeah.
stuff. Put my team up here. Here we go. So it was Salah to Saka that opened it up a little bit more. So I didn't have Pedro Porro before this morning. I didn't have Solanke before this morning, and I didn't have a little man named Ben Brereton Diaz before
Mhm.
this
The
morning.
Stoke-born Ben Brereton Diaz. We covered that last
As
night.
we discussed last night,
Yeah. I saw one website that
Stoke-born,
calls him Ben Brereton. There's all sorts of different ways to say this guy's name, apparently.
and that's great. I love them all.
Mhm.
So this kind of is born out of that Suchek discussion that I've been bringing up the last couple of weeks of that eighth attacker, that fifth midfielder,
Mhm.
and my strong desire to have an actual attacker as opposed to the Harry Winks effect.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
there's somebody in between Diaz and Winks. Winks probably going to play a lot of minutes, but he's
Mhm.
probably not going to get a lot of fantasy points. Then you've got Brereton Diaz, who's probably going to play a lot of minutes. And if Southampton are going to score any goals, he's probably going to have high ex goal involvement,
Mhm.
but he's 5.5. Is the answer somewhere in between with Mr. Rogers at
Mhm.
Aston Villa at 5 million, who is kind of a short term punt? Looks like he'll
Yeah.
probably
To
start
me,
ahead of Holly Watkins.
yeah. To me, it's
Hmm.
a clear yes. I just think if you don't want to have a 4.5 million player, I just can't imagine you ever really wanting to start Brereton Diaz, right? I mean, so it's almost like he's like a he's like an emergency backup option, right? Like especially the team you put together. Now I could see maybe before when you had a couple of players that were a little riskier. Maybe you'd want a little more firepower in him. But this team, like, it's a pretty strong 11. So I don't know that you necessarily need that, like, that much firepower,
Right.
in terms of just like amount of your total. And also, I mean, the advantage of having Rodgers is it allows you, if you want, to move Saka to Cole Palmer with one transfer, right? Which I
Hmm.
think is if you just bench the 0.5,
Yep.
right? I actually have 0.5 on my bench right now as well,
Yeah.
which I think is just a really nice thing to have going into game week 1 if you can swing it.
If I had an extra point 0.5, the first thing I would do would be get out of this 4.5 goalkeeper hell that I am in. Um,
Oh, it's fine. They're all bad. There's no good ones. Who is the good one?
I
Like,
don't know. So I have no. I am interested in Newcastle defense, but I'm not really interested enough. Like
uh-huh.
there are good options, but I'm not interested enough in any of the Newcastle defenders right now. So there is the appeal of Nick Pope, 5 million, pretty good
Hmm.
deal. Then there is
I
also
guess.
Pickford,
Yeah.
who was the best fantasy goalkeeper last season. Is there enough upside there? So this does tie into the whole Barrington Diaz discussion of what how is an extra point 0.5 best used. Yes, there is a great use to just have it in the bank so you can
Hmm.
do that Cole Palmer move, like you said, or any other move for that matter. Um, or is it ultimately the that transfer that you're trying to anticipate is somebody who can be covered by Brereton Diaz. Like I have him, I've paid a little extra for him, and he can move in if there's any catastrophe
I just think
in
you've
this
got to
spot.
like, you just need like the 10,000 foot view here, right? Which is that you are spending 5.5 million for a Southampton midfielder
Hmm.
that you don't plan to ever start. Right. And I
Yep.
think like when you look at it through that lens, it just feels like you might as well. I mean, honestly, I would just get the 4.5, a 4.5 million midfielder, but I understand that Rogers at least affords you a little more um secure, like a little more kind of
Yeah.
fill in potential, if
Sure.
somebody gets cold or whatever, or
Yeah.
an injury.
Right. So you treat that position as just money. You don't treat it as a player.
Kind of. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's what I think. Yeah.
No, I'm not trying to push back. I'm just kind of like trying to clarify
Yeah.
that logic. Yeah, it makes sense. This is often my weakness as a fantasy manager is that I try to just build this robust portfolio,
Right.
and
Like some hedges sort of built in, kind
I
of
don't know.
like
Yeah, is it
injury
or it?
hedges, Yeah.
Yeah, it's hedgy. It's also a like imagine building a Formula One car. Like
Hmm.
the goal with the Formula One car is you've got like the best, most efficient guts to make the car go fast. And then to
Yeah.
help the car go fast, you just sort of like streamline every aspect of it.
Hmm.
And if I were to build a Formula One car, like using my fantasy basis, is I would have
Yeah.
a car with a good engine, and then I would couldn't resist like putting like cool stuff on the
Yeah.
car. Like,
For
oh, it kind of
people for
look
people
cool
who
if we
don't
had like a
know,
big antenna on the
yeah,
back.
for people who don't know, Brandon and I met while working in a McLaren factory many years ago. So that's a
God, you're taking
yeah.
me back now.
What is 87, I
Uh,
think. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it seems so long ago now. Pre-COVID, seems forever ago. So, yeah, I think that's logical. Then okay, so if I were to take Brereton Diaz out and
Uh-huh.
say just take the full million and bring
Yeah,
in some dolt like Harry Winks,
sure.
do I put any of the money anywhere else? Like,
Right.
do I upgrade a goalkeeper? Your answer is no, and I don't really disagree with that, but that is an option.
Yeah.
And
I see two potential moves.
okay,
Uh One would be Smith Rowe to a 6.5, if there was somebody that you liked. I know you're not like super big on Nkuku, but he's actually he's wormed his way back into my team, and I can
okay,
share that. in a second. The other one would be a little more out there, but it would be you could turn. Well, you already have Saka though. I was going to say you could turn Gordon to Odegaard with that million, but I don't know if I love Saka and Odegaard as a double up, just because Arsenal have some difficult fixtures coming up. You know, it
Yep.
feels a little extreme. Talk to me about Solanke, because I don't think he's been in most versions of your squad, and so that's
Yeah.
a little bit of a change.
I made a squad right after the Solanke to Spurs move became official. And so like my immediate reaction to that transfer was I wanted him. And
Sounds. I don't like the way you said it. That sounds weird. That's
yeah, desire is a word that comes to mind. He's just a cool guy. Now I just had there is this bias of great times that I had with him last season. But I think with that comes it's almost like when you see the best of a player, you start to like more accurately rate some of their good qualities. Solanke has had like an up and down career in the Premier League. He couldn't cut it at Liverpool, et cetera. And so you sort of like downgrade him. And you could see him doing great things at Bournemouth, but you're like, well, you know, it's how difficult is it to be the talisman at Bournemouth?
Right.
But I think seeing the best of him at Bournemouth last season made me appreciate, like, oh, this guy is like, he's a proper, like, he's got a real football body, Josh. He can really move himself about the box. And I think then everything that we've talked about how he fits into Postecoglou's system and the idea of repeatable chances and him being the focal point and having decent ball movers around him. You know, Madison has not been great for a while, but if he comes back into form, Madison will be finding Solanke. Son will be doing his thing. So there's just so much to like about him. And I think also going up from João Pedro to Solanke is similar to that Brereton Diaz conversation. Sorry, I'm going to correct this beer in a moment, and then I will not have a frog in my throat. But Solanke, I think, makes your front, like if you do Isak Holland Solanke, if you just spend more on your third striker, it gives you probably a little bit more fluidity in transferring. Like, so I haven't really been able to convince myself of Muniz at Fulham, João Pedro, we've talked a lot about, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and all these guys. The thing is at least one of those guys will certainly emerge as a foreign player. And I think I just have more confidence in Solanke being in that Spurs system and ride him until another sort of answer.
Ride him. I don't know where the way you're talking about Solanke is making it's giving me feels.
I'm a big fan. But then like the idea, the Salah coming out of the squad it's balanced. Like that's when managers articulate that idea of like, I can't do like too many premium players because then I lose balance. What I like also about Solanke is the same of how I like the non-Mo team is the ripple effect of this balance. And I just see more balance here.
Yeah, I think that all checks out. Yeah, I mean, in Poro, I mean, so you know, there were a couple questions in the chat, just especially because with these are patrons. I'm trying to, you know, I know you're in here looking as well, but I want to make sure we work them in.
Yeah, well, I was like monologuing there, so you catch me up on what's going on in the chat.
Well, just I think there were some questions about Barco. Dave said Barco out in the chat, and then you, that is to say, Dave, our guest from last night's pod, and then you obviously don't have Barco in your team. When we did our pod on Sunday, he was starting in your 11. So. Are you just kind of like thoroughly convinced now? And by the way, my team's going to look quite a bit different too, as you'll see in a minute. So are you just like convinced now that he's not, he can't be trusted? Like, is that the problem?
I guess I'm not convinced. It just, I've lost my appetite for it. I think Barco remains a very good pick for game week 1.
Yep.
I think Barco remains an interesting pick for the next month, but it's just if you get closer and closer to that first deadline, you're just like, I just don't want to have to think about this guy, and I don't want to have to solve this problem. I admit that we don't know if he is even a problem that needs to be solved.
Right.
Because the reason why everyone was so excited about Barco is he had a monster preseason, looked really good. There's so many like,
Oh, I mean the grip and like you like, and I know where you're going with
yeah,
this, and I mean to catch you up, but
sure,
the graves of so many game week 1 fantasy teams are littered
yeah,
with the preseason star, right?
yeah,
Who is
right.
affordable
Hmm.
and then kind of instantly loses their spot. I
What a
mean,
grift!
there's just
What a
yeah.
grift by Barco. Absolute grifter. This guy.
Every year there's somebody. We could go back 10 years and
Yeah,
identify
yeah.
these various people.
Yeah, there's just movement. It's Estupiñán being back training on grass, on top of the move. Brighton's movement in the transfer market in the
Yep.
last couple of days, that
Yep.
just makes you sort of step back and realize things are not as certain as maybe they felt or
Yeah.
at
All
Brighton.
right. All right. So you got me nervous now because we have an hour to go until the deadline. You're talking about, I think, okay, should we go ahead and make these moves, Brandon? Are you going to try to move Burton Diaz out right now? And if so, who do you want to move him to? And what do you want to do with that money? Like, I think we're not
Yeah,
we're out of the theoretical realm here, and
yeah.
now
We
we're in the
had.
like practical. Like, I think I want to see you make if you're going to do it.
Yeah,
I
sure.
want to see you make these moves in real time on this stream. I want to
It's
see it
so
happen.
funny. It's so funny. That's that realization of, oh, I'm a podcaster. When we do this, when we talk,
Mhm.
it is always without action.
That's true because normally it's like it's 9 o'clock on Sunday
Yeah,
or something, right? And we've got a full week. Nothing really. Maybe there's like a price change you've got to get ahead
yeah,
of or something, but otherwise it's like there's no. We're in the realm of the theoretical.
yeah.
We don't have to like lock in necessarily.
I'm gonna say the only move there are no moves that we have gone through that are appealing enough to me. If I were to do anything uh after the conversation we just had, it would
Yep.
be to just move Brereton Diaz to Rogers or Winks to save money, and I would not
Okay.
start. I mean, I'm not willing to give up Emil Smith Rowe just for the Friday fun factor. Uh,
No,
romantic
I actually
as
think
that
that he's
sounds.
I think he's a good pick.
Yeah.
I actually brought in Robinson and I have been debating. I mean, I have Chris Wood now, and so we can talk more about that in a second. But I have been looking at Mooney's and Wood and Smith Rowe. The version of my team that I had that I went to bed with last night actually
Uh-huh.
had Smith Rowe, and I ultimately, I guess I really maybe it's the wrong way to be doing this, but I have convinced myself that I might want to have um I want to be part of the Liverpool ride, new manager, like a lot of great fixtures coming up for the next few weeks. I can't get there with Salah. So the second best option is Jota. And I
Hmm.
was on Luis Diaz. And then last night, as we talked it through, I was like, just to repeat it for anyone who hasn't listened, yeah, I mean, there's just an opportunity to get a reverse or not a reverse, an out of position player, right? This happens. I mean, it's amazing with Jota because every year he gets reclassified, right? He goes back and forth between midfielder and forward every
Yep.
year.
Yeah.
And then every year he changes position again. And so next year he will be reclassified as a forward and then he'll go back to playing as a midfielder. This is just the Jota experience. And so the only thing that's annoying about Jota is it's very hard for me to see him as a long-term buy, right?
Hmm.
It's you're really only going to have him until he gets injured. But even if you can just get 2 weeks out of it before the injury sets in, I think that's probably worth it just because he's
The
so.
foregone conclusion.
It is.
It's
Don't you think?
incredible.
Do you think? Okay, I mean, we have
Uh-huh.
3 weeks until the first international break. It comes up
Yeah.
pretty fast this season. Do
Yeah.
you think that Jota will get through the first 3 weeks of the season without an injury?
I mean, sure. Logic would say, yeah. My my Mima and my Peepaw just told me not to talk like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is it like it's like a bad luck to wish an injury? I'm not wishing it on him. I have him in
No.
my team, but it's just like it does. I think it'll happen. What I hope is that his injury, the inevitable injury, maybe he gets injured over the international break. It's going to happen. That the inevitable injury comes when I at least have a transfer or two
Sure.
banked, and
Yeah.
so it's a little easier
But
to get them out.
it's the same with all these players. Jota gets injured, and his price is great in his replacement value. I guess. Like, I don't have if the Nkuku myth becomes a reality, I will be there to do that.
Mhm.
And that's like to turn Smith Rowe into Nkuku takes a little bit more doing. So the
Yeah.
7.5 price tag for the likes of Diaz and Jota is
Yeah.
quite sweet.
I
I dig
know.
it.
You know, the one player who I okay, let's resolve before we talk about my team. So let's resolve it. Do you, because I think we should move on to my team and then we're going to get to
Yeah.
questions. There'll probably be some breaking news. So do you want to make any changes to your squad right
The
now while we're sharing and
the
talking?
one thing I'm closest to doing is bringing in Kwanzaa, the Liverpool center back, for either Robinson or Konsa at Villa. So
Okay.
and I believe he's in your current draft. So
He
maybe
is.
this I'm not going to make any changes right
Okay.
now.
Okay.
So let's use that as a transition to your team because I want you to talk me through a little bit of that logic.
Okay. That sounds great. I'm going to share my squad here. I have spent uh many hours, like a lot of time tinkering over the last like basically since the time we finished our pod last night. Can you see that? Should I bring this up in size at all, or is
I
that
can see it. Yeah, it's
okay?
good.
Great. So basically, I've stuck with Flecken. I don't feel a super strong opinion on the 4.5 million keepers. This is a little bit what we talked about last night. I, it honestly feels like I'm gonna be a waste of energy to spend too long debating Flecken versus Areola versus
Yeah. Isn't that what like
Henderson.
Trump said about working out
Yeah,
is like
you have a finite amount of energy, and that's why he never works out. I mean, I don't know. It's like he's still. I mean,
he's
you know, he's
still alive.
yeah, exactly. You know, exactly. That's what we will say about it. That's the nicest thing you can say about him is he's still alive. But the big change is Gvardiol has moved to Kwanzaa, and I really want Gvardiol. I'd really like to have him, but
Mhm.
I just think Kwanzaa is. I mean, a 4.5 million. To be totally completely honest, I think that Ipswich are going to score tomorrow, and I don't feel hugely enthusiastic about having him on my team for game week 1, but I like him better than the alternatives that I have on my bench. So I think that, you know, I'm gonna stick with him. I'm going with Hall. Just again, I just love. Maybe it's a short term play, but I just love Hall for this game week 1 fixture. And then Saliba, who again, I just don't have the guts to stick with Gabrielle because I can't go through what I went through last season with with the start of the season. And so then up front, I've got Jota in for Luis Diaz, and then Son, and then the big move is Saka has now come into my squad. And Nkuku is back into my squad. And Nkuku is primarily back in because he's like I think he's my favorite 6.5 million. If I had 7, I probably would go back to Eze. Honestly, I can't afford him anymore. Nor can I afford Gordon at 7.5. And so I like him the best. He's definitely the stat tables favorites there as well.
Mhm.
And again, this is what I talk about when it comes to using the stat stuff. It doesn't have to be the only thing you use, but when you're debating 10 different options, it's totally fine to go to that, right? Because it's not like the stats are like some guy named who's just like spitting this out, right? It's just a series of data points that they put together and give you some, you know. So it's a good guideline if you don't, you know,
It's
if you don't
not
know.
some guy.
Well, I don't know, but people treat AI like it's
A
like
guy.
review is like a person who's like giving you suggestions or something, as if it's not like an elaborate Excel chart that just like
Yeah,
spits
these
out
are the
a, you
same
know,
people who go to that like little like genie who grants you a wish machine down on
from
the
like
boardwalk,
big. Yeah,
and
yeah.
they think that he's a real guy too.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, exactly. Well, that guy is actually real in that case, but
how else do you explain what happened to Tom
yeah,
Hanks? It's
yeah,
true.
exactly. It doesn't make it. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense.
Don't make no damn sense.
Yeah, exactly. It's amazing he actually found the original game. You know, at the end of that movie. Thank God. You know, we wouldn't have Philadelphia, Forrest Gump, any of the classics that we.
Yeah, they finally
Yeah,
returned to us our beloved Tom Hanks.
yeah, exactly. So Saka is the interesting one, and there was just a. I just felt like when I looked at my team the last like on Sunday's pod and on Thursday's pod, I felt like there was a lack of like superstar upside, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was like
Yep.
there, I felt like I had a lot of projection type picks, and like, but like I just had like one too many of them, like one too many, like I
Mhm.
don't know if this guy can do it. And so I sort of, as I went through my squad, the question was basically, can I replace players that I like with like good enough replacements that aren't so much worse that it screws my balance up completely, right? And so the kind of
Yep.
first puzzle piece, or whatever, the first replacement was just feeling like Chris Wood, who I am like, I know what he is, right? Like, it's not like it's like I'm not like
What is
hugely
he?
enamored with him. He is a guy who scored 14 goals last season, who has a bunch of bad fixture, or a bunch of good fixtures, like matches against bad teams to start the season, right? And I just feel like he's steady, and steady seems kind of fine to me. The and
Hmm.
the, and the reason that and I prefer Solanke? Yes. Do I prefer him significantly? Right? Do I think he's streets better than Wood, at least for the first few weeks of the season? No, I guess I don't in the end, right? And that was what enabled me to make this swap. So that frees up 1.5 million, right? Okay, great, interesting.
Yeah.
So
I
now
just want to shout out our friend Nick in the chat who says Josh went to bed with Solanke and woke up with Wood.
I
So
know.
there you go.
Honestly, if his name was Ben Brereton Diaz, I think he'd be a lot more popular. I think there's something about the name Chris Wood that just immediately connotes like a kind of boring, like
Dork.
soggy log of a player, right? And
Hmm.
yeah, if his name was Diogo Jota, I think he'd be a very popular pick for.
Woodinho.
Yeah, exactly. Wadinho. Yeah, if he was the Brazilian Wadinho, he'd be even more popular. So, okay, so right, so I'm sort of explaining the rationale here, right?
Hmm.
You turn Solanke into Wood, that frees up 1.5 million. You turn one of your 4.5 million defenders on your bench into 4 million. There's another 0.5 million. You turn Gavardiol into Kwanzaa, that's another 0.5 million. Suddenly, without significantly disrupting my squad, I have freed up 3.5 million. Right. And so that is enough money to suddenly turn a 6.5 million player like Garnacho into Saka, right? Like just like a
Hmm.
solid, trustworthy option that I can have effectively forever, right? Like, I mean, it's like he plays so many minutes, right?
Yes.
And he's
Yes.
like he's highly trusted. He's not necessarily my favorite player to own in fantasy. I, like you, get frustrated with the way that he every match it feels like he's like dealing with a significant long-term injury, right? But then at the end of many matches, he also has 12 points. So it's like, I don't know, it's like you got to just kind of, it's like he doesn't necessarily pass the like eye test from a like, I feel super enthused. He's very likable. Like anyone who
Yeah.
watched the Arsenal All or Nothing knows what a kind of like he's an easy guy to root for. But it just means from like a fantasy perspective, there's always that kind of stress with him. Like, oh God, am I about to lose him in the 36th minute here? As he's like, just like weeping
Somebody's
on the
spraying some
sideline.
unknown substance all over his
Exactly.
knees, and
Exactly.
there you go.
Yeah, I'm not saying he's soft. He just gets tackled a lot, right? And that's
He
just
gets
part of the
tackled a lot,
yeah.
and it's a game that he and the club play with the officials too, because
Yep.
Saka's strength is his strength. Like you watch him play, and you're like, is this guy strong? Well, no, he is that strong because he's just beating guys all the time and breaking
Yep.
tackles.
Yep.
But he occasionally has to go down. He has to make a meal of it to help protect himself. Like refs, you
Yep.
have not called anything.
Yeah.
That's sort of the
There's
thing.
a kind of there's certain players who have turned that into like a career, right?
Jack
Like Jack
Grealish.
Jack Grealish,
Yeah.
exactly. That's exactly what comes to mind, and it's really effective. And honestly, Jack Grealish like very rarely gets hurt, and I think that's like a big. Actually, I mean, I think he got
Yeah.
hurt
It
just
was
last
always it
season,
was
but in
annoying to
general, yeah,
me. Gareth Bale went through this a little bit at Spurs where he would get yellow cards for diving all of the time
yeah,
because Gareth Bale was moving faster than anyone else on the pitch. So in order for him to avoid a career-ending injury, he would
yeah,
leap out of the way of tackles and then go down. And refs would call him for diving and he's like, "Well, no, like I'm moving in a different way than
yeah,
anyone else on this pitch. Give me a
yeah.
break."
Yeah, Messi is the unusual exception there, right? Because um, it has to be because he's so small, right? And has such a low center of gravity. He's a little bit like
Yeah.
Aguero too, who they just like they were able to just run through the tackles, right? And keep
Yep.
playing. But I don't think
Yep.
most
Yep.
people can do that.
Totally.
Um, so so basically now I have this team that I think sacrifices a little bit, right? I don't have Gordon. My defense feels a little shaky. But what I do have are, I think, at least three legit superstars, right? In Saka, Holland, and Isak, as well as a player with a lot of upside in Jota, a player with a lot of upside as well, I think, in Nkuku, a very solid forward in Wood, and then my one kind of premium defender in Saliba, uh, and then a bunch of 4.5s, and then again, yeah. So my bench is even weaker than yours, right? I have nothing on my bench, but I do have Robinson, who I can start as soon as game week 2, right? And so I think that is the one, and you can certainly start in most of the upcoming game weeks, right? I think it's they have one difficult match maybe after like coming up, but it's sort of it's a nice run for him. So, and what's amazing to me is in this squad, which I feel like is like a pretty like, like substantial squad. Okay, so I actually have used my whole budget. I thought I had 0.5 left still, but I feel like I'm really getting a lot out of this team for 100 million. Like it feels like it's pretty filled up here. So I'm curious though, are there things that you see and you're like, I just wouldn't do this in my own team?
Well, you've spent a lot of your limited energy, your finite energy, making a case for Chris Wood, but I just
Yeah.
find that pick to be that's not for me.
Okay.
And generally, the defense is a little concerning to me. You've highlighted this, so you're aware of it, that it just feels thin,
Yeah.
and it's a matter of perception before the season starts because like Kwanzaa and Hall are both players that it could be in a couple weeks' time. They are players that obviously we wouldn't be concerned about their minutes, and they have it in them to play well. They play on good teams. The
Yep.
points will come. Happy to be proved wrong there, but I think most of your risk is sort of just like focused on your defense right now.
Yeah, I think that's true. And this is like, I would turn Kwanzaa into somebody else. That actually, if I do anything in the next 50 minutes, it might be to make a defensive change. It's kind of funny that
Sure.
the one move you might make is
Yeah.
Kwanzaa in, and mine might be Kwanzaa out. But that's the one where it's like it feels a little speculative, right? Like,
Yeah.
could we
Yep.
wake up
Yes. Right.
tomorrow and Kwanzaa's not starting? Yes, and that is maybe the one. Like a Lewis Hall, I actually feel pretty good about. Like we're not going to get Mark Gahey isn't going to start this week. I mean, he hasn't, nothing's happened yet there. And even if he moves midway through next week,
Just think
like
about the housing search alone, Josh. It's going to take him weeks to find a place to live.
Yeah, the chain of effects that would lead to Gahey, Hall, and actually, Hall would be on my bench next week anyway, right? And so it's really just, so I'm kind of targeting this week. I would say Hall could turn into somebody else as well. Kwanzaa could turn into somebody else. Saliba, I feel fine with. And this is really when
Saliba's a mortal lock. Nothing's happening to him.
I think so. I just want a really solid, stable Arsenal defender, and I'm willing to go with a player with a little bit less XG than Saliba, as are you, I think, right? That's just, and then, I know, I mean, you're like you love Saliba. I like him. It's more of a like fest with me. I love him as a player. Of course. We're talking about.
He reminds me of Robert Huth, played at Stoke and then at Leicester, or just like a guy who seems trustworthy. Like if you needed to be picked up from the airport, or if you were going camping and you were not an experienced camper, guys like Huth and Saliba are people who you need in your life.
All right, let's do a little experiment here then. Okay, let's do let's go to FPL review. Okay. And I'm just curious. I don't know if I should share it or not because it's we are paying for it. You know what? It's fine. It's a little.
While you figure out what's next, I'm gonna do some shout outs here in the chat and listen. Hello again, all of our patrons. I think we'll in a couple of minutes maybe get to a moment where we can just like fire off some Q&As, saying you throw questions in the chat. But I like where you're going with this FPL review thing. But I do want to say, yes, Tim, Raygun, the Australian breaker, like what position and how much would she cost in FPL? I say 6.5 million
it's
defender.
interesting.
Tim says Raygun is a 12.5 million mid.
I
Incredible.
think 15 million forward actually. I think yeah, I'm going even harder there. Yeah.
Made the most expensive player ever in FPL, Raygun.
Who is the most
And
expensive flop in FPL history? That's an interesting question. I think there was one year where like Robin Van Persie was like maybe his second year at Man United, he was like 12.5 and he was
yeah,
like
right.
injured the entire season or something like that. He wasn't really a flop
Yeah,
though
it's
necessarily.
always the price before the fall. Wayne
Yeah.
Rooney was there too. So
Yeah,
it's always
it's
Manchester
usually a
United
Man United
guys.
player. All right, so I'm in review here, and
Okay.
I would, if this wasn't a Patreon feed, I wouldn't necessarily share it because it is, I'm happy to say this. We're Patreon supporters of them. I think it's a good service. It only costs a couple bucks. This is a free plug, by the way. We're not aligned with them in any way, but I do think it can be handy to dig through their stuff, just for
It's just like
just for
proprietary
information.
stuff that is like you pay for it. Hence you're prefacing this with we do not share this lightly.
Exactly. So just out of curiosity, though, I wanted to see. So as you can see here, I'm sorting by all players, and then I'm filtering by defender, and then I'm filtering by cost, right? So 4.5 million. So just out of
Hmm.
curiosity, right? If
Sure.
I were
Who's
to
on the
make,
short list?
yeah, who's on the short list here? And so I'm this is not total. If you wanted, I could go by total points, but I'm just going to go by game week one, just out of curiosity, right? Because that's one of the
Hmm.
reasons I would consider moving him. So at the top, we've got Burn Hall. Burn Hall. I like that together. It sounds like one. So it actually sounds like like a old English forest, doesn't it?
Hmm.
Burnham Hall. Like it's like
Yes,
a
yes.
yeah,
So
yeah.
what's the forest in Hamlet? Burnham Wood.
Burnham Woods. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Burnham Wood. Burnham Wood.
Yes.
There's a book that just came out that but called Burnham
Yes.
Wood.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Cattle. The woman who wrote the Luminaries. It's meant to be great.
Yeah, Eleanor
Eleanor
Catton. I think
Catton. Yeah.
I think our friend Laura T is the editor on that stuff. All right, so we've got Byrne and we've got Hall, Van de Ven, who I kind of at some point I actually think he was in my very very first draft, and then I honestly just sort of forgot about him.
Hmm.
So, but
Just like
Van de Ven
Dre.
is actually kind of an interesting pick. I hadn't really given him too much thought. I mean, so he's a very stable center back. He's not as fun in some ways, maybe
As a Poro.
as Poro or even Kwanzaa, I guess. I mean, Kwanzaa's fun just because of that name, right? Again, if Chris Wood's name was just Kwanzaa, no first name or last name, he would be a more popular pick. I guarantee it. So what do you think about Van de Ven? I mean, you already have Poro, but like, what do you think
Yeah.
about Van de Ven just independent of
Yeah.
that?
It's a question of is Van de Ven like cover for Poro if you want to play that game, or just straight up, how do you feel about the Spurs
He's got a
defense?
little bit of goal threat, right? Like a little bit of. I'm just looking at the fixture difficulty here as
How
well.
many
If I were
goals
to
did he score last season? I'm
just
guessing
like
maybe one. Oh,
one
he
or
had a
one
couple
or
of
I,
bangers like
I
Guardiola
know I
style.
felt like he was involved, right? Like it's is he Dutch? I mean, all the Dutch can all score a little bit. They all have
Total
um
football.
yeah, total voetball. So all right, so like just comparing our 4.5s, we've got Ipswich away for Liverpool, Brentford at home. In game week 2, Man United away in game week 3, then Forest and Bournemouth in 4 and 5, right? So that's the first 5 for them. For Spurs, we've got Leicester away, which I think is a better fixture than Ipswich away, just because I think Ipswich are a better team. And I think they're going to be, I think that's a dangerous match for Liverpool. Like, I think,
Hmm.
and, new manager. I mean, how long has it been since Ipswich were in the league? At least 15 years, maybe longer. So,
Wait,
yeah,
point
whatever. It's
being,
Well, just like I think the crowd's gonna be fired up. I just think it's gonna be a great
yeah.
East Anglia is gonna be in fuego tomorrow, and so I think
Mm,
I just think there's Liverpool like running out to like an easy breezy 2-0 win, for
mm.
example, is not something I think is on the cards.
Sure. You remember
Yeah,
Leeds came up that first year they came up, or the last time they came up, and it was that 3-3 thriller with Liverpool, and
right.
no one quite knew. I mean, it's a different team,
Yeah,
certainly than this Ipswich team, but
yeah,
it's like
and
to your
yeah.
point of promoted sides game week 1. It's a mixed bag.
It's true, exactly. And so who knows, right? I mean, last year I think the kickoff match was really boring one. Actually, it was Man City away to Burnley, if you recall, and Burnley Burnley lost 2-0. I think it was actually exactly what I don't think is going to happen for these two matches. But I think if you look beyond game week one, I would give the slight edge to Liverpool still because you've got Everton at home, which I think, okay, that's a pretty good clean sheet possibility. But then for, game week three for Spurs is away to Newcastle and then home to Arsenal. I don't see them keeping clean sheets in either of those two matches, right? So I maybe see, and I think even the Leicester one, just because it's a Monday night match at the King Power. You and I have seen a Monday night match at the King Power before. I mean, it's going to be. I don't know. This is like maybe this is just Josh's like up in his feels mode here, but like
sure, the 12th
playing,
man.
Yeah, exactly. Playing a difficult, like playing a mid-table, like a spicy mid-table ish. I guess they're like bottom of the table, right? They're promoted, they might go down, but like just like playing like a bottom half of the table team in a night match is always a dangerous proposition, right?
I think you're eating your own tail there to an extent because
Yeah.
okay, then instead I'm going to get a defender on a worse team.
Well, I guess I'm looking at
And then
Kwanzaa
expect
versus
what to happen.
Yeah, I guess I'm looking at Kwanzaa versus Van de Ven. I mean, I guess I'm just wondering if there's a, if we could, okay, let's move past those two for a second then. Okay. So then we've got Martinez. No, thank you. No, thank you on Man United defenders. I need to see it before I believe it with them, right? Like they're, I don't know. Would you consider Martinez? Is that something kick around?
Honestly, yes.
Okay.
Honestly, I would.
Okay. I was too fast to judge.
I was saying yesterday how I'm kind of confounded by all this optimism about Manchester United by the pundits coming into the season, like, oh, they're going to finish higher up the table, etc.
Yeah.
And I think if we see that, it's probably most likely going to be in a stronger defense. And with cannot commit this guy's the Dutch guy, the Dutch center back that they just signed.
Yep.
Like, I feel like that's great news for people who are looking at Martinez for fantasy, because like if he cannot have to play against an oaf like or beside an oaf like Lindelof or Maguire.
Yeah. Yeah. Who is it? Is it Mazraoui? Is that it? No, Nasser Mazraoui? Is that
no,
or is it De Ligt?
Yeah, De Ligt.
Yeah,
yes,
sure.
Exactly.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So that it just, and I think I still am kind of like they're, God, I'm really horrible with their names right now. Who's their goalkeeper? Crazy guy.
The Onana.
Yeah, Onana. I'm still like always Onana kind of curious. I like Onana's profile. I
love a I love that the gradual, the biggest change that's happened to you over the last 5 years in fantasy is your preference has shifted from 5.5 million goalkeepers to 5 million goalkeepers. It's a subtle. Honestly, that's what you should do. What you should do is you should just go down to Morgan Rogers at 5 million and just get Jordan Pickford because bring in Pickford, because Pickford will make you happy. You will, like, if you don't do it, you might be annoyed at yourself. Like, you want Pickford, so you should really consider it, because I do think they have a great clean sheet possibility for that Brighton match.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, well, what about him? I mean, that actually, he's not even really. He's pretty far down. I think farther down than he should be. But what about Michaelenko? I mean, he's a 4.5 million defender for Everton. He got a pretty decent run of fixtures. Is there any?
I've never liked him.
Interest?
I've never liked him.
Okay. Yeah. That's like a kind of anti like a Ukrainian thing, or like a
big time.
Yeah. It's just like
no. I'm
Brandon's a Russian agent for those who don't know.
I am a sleeper sellout to the point where I still think that I work for the KGB. I haven't been kept abreast of the current situation over there. No, Michaelenko, he's a good player, but it's just a little too soft for me. I don't even know what I mean by that, but I don't feel it. I actually like Lewis Dunk at 4.5 is super appealing to me. Like Lewis Dunk has always been one of those Huth Saliba esque sort of like sturdy fantasy assets. And
Yep.
last season at 5 million, it was harder to justify him in your team. And suddenly it was easy to justify everything when Cole Palmer started doing his thing at 5.5. But 4.5, I think, is a great price for Dunk. I like him.
Yeah, Dunk is interesting as well. Like, are we overdoing it with this? I guess it doesn't feel like we're overdoing it with this question
We've got
because we're going to actually be starting these guys, right? Like
yeah.
it's hard
This
to
is
figure
like
it
at
out.
my wedding when I realized I've been talking to this guy I barely knew for 30 minutes,
I love
and
this story.
I was like, I'm paying for this,
Mhm.
and every people who I actually love are here.
Yeah,
So are we
it's
spending too
incredible.
much time talking
I
about
know.
4.5?
I'm
There are a
always asking you
couple
to
of
bring that story up. I really am your hype man. You know, it's you don't return the favor enough. You know, it's next time we're out, I'm gonna make you my my hype man. You're gonna be like, oh Josh, tell that story about
okay.
the time you escaped that wedding at 6:30 in the morning or whatever.
Oh yeah, that's a good
It's an
one.
old
That is
story.
a
That's
good
an
one.
old one. Yeah.
All your stories, all your good stories are kind of provocative in a
Yeah, they're a
way.
little
They have a
dirty. That's true. They don't work
little
as well.
dangerous.
That's really there's a Patreon after dark episodes. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't want families in
But
cars listening to these.
so we've got 34 minutes left until the deadline, and we don't have to totally move off of this topic, but I just kind of want to set the table for people
Yeah.
watching.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
I think there are a couple of things that we should cover. CC Mark in the chat said we should talk a little bit about captaincy for
Yep.
game week 1, and then I
Yep.
do want to give our Patreon people a moment to just jump in with any like dilemmas they
Yeah.
have.
Why don't you
So, uh-huh.
if you want to go through the questions, Brandon, it sounds like I have like my the way I'm moving my screens around, I'm not
Sure.
able to see the questions
All
right in
right.
front of me. So if you
All right.
want to, I'll try to answer
I'm
them
gonna
lightning
watch
round
the chat.
style. Okay.
Okay. So
You want to
let's just start
scroll
off
up?
with
Yep.
Taylor Ferguson asked a big one. Son versus Saka. I have
Hmm.
Solanke. Is a double up too much? So
Yep.
I have Solanke and Saka. You have Son and Saka.
Hmm.
So of these three players that Taylor is talking about, we've come at it from different angles. Tell me about
Yeah.
your view of having both Son and Saka.
Well, the when I talked about it a minute ago, my rationale was basically just to restate it is that I think I'm able to get both of them right. Like they're both like heavy hitters who should play a lot of minutes, who have double digit return potential, and I was able to do it without, I think, making huge sacrifices to my squad. Right. And so that's why I like it for my team. And I think I think the reason it works for me and not for you and maybe some people listening is that I have to, like, basically my defense and bench are decimated, right? That is the downside there. But I'm sort of okay with it, especially for like the first few weeks of the season. I think whatever rationale that makes you feel like you want to have Solanke is the same rationale that would make you want to have Son. And so I think you can sort of think of them somewhat correlated in the sense that it's even better if you have both of them, right? If you think that there's potential for some big returns in these upcoming matches between, with Spurs, and I think they have a lot of potential for some big scores in some of the upcoming matches, then having even more of them is fine. And I don't think you need to necessarily balance your squad out, right? With like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I should have whomever, João Pedro, just for balance sake. I also don't think there's really anyone in that 7 million or lower range that's really comparable to Solanke, right? Like I have Wood because he's a full 1.5 million cheaper, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
almost like, and if you go, like, there's really no one else unless you want to go the 0.5 for Havertz, which I actually don't hate. Like
Sure.
I think that is like a very reasonable not that he asked about that, but I think that is a reasonable like player to bring in. He's probably a little undervalued, much like I think Son is undervalued, given his strong fixtures and the fact that he's been playing well over the summer. I also think Solanke might take a little attention away from him, which will help him even more. All right, let's go to the next question.
Yeah, can you stop
Time's
sharing your
ticking here.
screen? I
Oh,
clearly
sure.
have a very popular draft. There's been a request for me to share
Oh, let's see it.
my
Yeah.
squad again, and then while I'm doing that, the next question comes from Jimmy, who says, I've two who to start conundrums: Barco versus Anderson at Crystal Palace, or Minta versus ESR? Okay, so the question is Barco versus Anderson, who do you start? And then Minta versus Emil Smith Rowe, who do you start for game week 1?
I'll go Barca because I think he starts game week 1. And
Mm-hmm.
I would go Emil Smith Rowe just because it feels like the MFFA pick to me. It feels really fun to have him for this match. I think Fulham will have some chances.
Yeah, totally agree. Okay. Thanks, Josh. You're welcome, Taylor. Who is Minta? Matt wants to know. Minty, he suggests. Minta, for those not in the know, is a new sort of right winger for Brighton, who is
he's the JD Vance of
he's a new guy. He's a new guy, but his profile is basically like a heavily involved winger who the concern, the skepticism about Minta as a fantasy asset is he does a lot of work on the pitch, and could he get dragged into too many defensive duels as opposed to getting farther up the pitch? And this is like the intriguing thing about Brighton. Totally, is what are they going to look like? Because they could
too many question marks. This is why I don't want really anybody from there.
Yeah. All right. So Taylor then says, jumping on the who to start train, Konsa away West Ham or the Jedi Anthony Robinson away Manchester United. So I'm starting Konsa. I do feel like that West Ham Villa match feels like maybe like a 1-1 draw sort of a thing. So I'm like not starting Konsa with this incredible confidence. Though
like although who's really better, right? I mean, we just looked at all those 4.5 million players. They're all like in the projected points are like 3.2 to 3.3 to 3.4. You know, it's really tight.
I would say it's set in stone that Manchester United do score at least a goal today, even though Fulham for the draw or the win. Let's go. But I do think United score.
I think so too. I actually think both teams to score is a fun bet for today if you're looking to bet. I will also add it. This is a free bonus bet for anybody in America. I found a great price on Diogo Jota anytime scorer yesterday. He's at plus 165 there. He's way lower on basically every other book. So I have a little funny money bet on Jota tomorrow, Brandon. So if anybody's interested.
Good shout in the chat from CC Mark. Timo Werner, one of the more expensive flops when he first came to
That's a great answer. Great answer. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. If you've got dilemmas, squad rotation things, subs, pop them in the chat.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit.
Scroll up. I know there's some questions up there.
Yeah. Well, I'll do that. Talk a little bit about your captaincy choice. Tim in the chat says Captain Isak. Are you on Isak or Holland right now?
I'm on Holland. Yeah. To me, it's just I just love Holland's ceiling in every match. I honestly think it's fine to just captain Holland literally every single week. And I don't really, I mean, if I had Salah like you did before, I get that, but for me, it's, I mean, it's also like a little bit of an unsettled Chelsea. Like suddenly like Chelsea's defense are good, it's like you and I were there for a 4-4 last year. And like, it's not like I'm like using like historical data.
Yeah,
I'm not using that match as like my guide for this, but I just love the upside of Holland. I think he could have a couple goals on Sunday.
Speaking of captaincy, Nick says with some shock, you sure you don't want Salah? So
yeah, that's for you, buddy.
Oh, so you just like you're like doing the full Don Draper. I don't think about you at all with Salah. Is that what you're doing?
I have not really seriously thought about Salah the entire offseason. I just don't. I feel like he's aging. Like
he's finished. Says
Josh
Landon.
I didn't say finished, but I don't think he has the upside that he had before. And I think, and listen, like everyone can laugh at me when he gets a hat trick tomorrow, but you can't play that way, right? You can't be like, oh, I have to have Salah because he could always go off. It's like you have to like trust your reads on this stuff, right? And my read is just that he is starting to slip a little bit from his very, very, very high peak, right? Which means he's still excellent.
Yeah. I feel like we're going to get one last great season out of Salah this season. Yeah. That's my feeling. But it's I was going to say something about having him versus not having him. I don't want to get into that like mode of I don't have Salah because I couldn't figure out the best way to get him. And so then the easy thing to do as a fantasy manager is then convince yourself that he's not worth having. I think he's very much worth having.
Sure.
It just didn't work for me.
Oh,
And
so
then
with Jota, there's a drop that Jota starts tomorrow.
all right, give us
So
sources.
the
Sources.
FPL newsletter, who's been a reliable source
Fantastic.
for drops recently.
Okay.
Also, there was the leak that Ahmad starts, but I was trying to figure out what that meant for fantasy. The Ahmad starts for Man United. Does that change anything? I don't think so. Should we both know that immediately? We're in the season now where you and I, like, we've been talking about 400 different players, and it starts to, like, it's hard for me to keep every formation in my head.
Wait, is Ahmad Diallo over Garnacho? Is that what you said?
Well, all we know is that Ahmad starts. That's all we know. So would that
that's
be
a
over
problem for Garnacho?
For Garnacho, possibly, yeah.
Or Garnacho plays on the left, and it's a huge career-ending problem for Marcus Rashford.
Well, I mean, he's ended his own career effectively, right?
He did it to himself.
He did it to himself.
Exactly. Glenn in the chat says Monday Night Football feels like a Leicester 2 Spurs 3 match.
That to me is, yeah.
Like what are we going to? Yeah,
we're going to get we're going to get a Porro assist and 2 bonus, and with 2 goals conceded, something like that, right? That feels right. Yeah. A 6-pointer the hard way from Pedro Porro.
Yeah. All right, Glenn, best football stat of all time. May 1984 was the last time in the league Manchester United were ahead at halftime, losing at full time versus Ipswich Town.
I saw that stat too. So this today could be almost the 40th anniversary, Brandon, of that happening. Let's see if it happens again. Do you think, on the captain question, just to go back to that for a second, do you think, are you considering Isak at all?
I mean, my team is on the screen right now, and it feels like it would be very dishonest for me with the vice captaincy on Saka that I would say, sure, totally.
Yeah.
How do you sort of say this and make it sound interesting and not just like glib or stupid? I love Isak as a captain option.
Mm-hmm.
How can I explain why he doesn't even have the vice captaincy for me? There's something sort of, I guess it's like veteran status, not quite inherent bias, but just sort of like you've been playing the game for too long, and therefore you read all these mystical things into talismanic historic players like Saka and Haaland. I mean, Haaland not necessarily historic in that he's only played 2 seasons in the Premier League, but what he's done versus what Isak has done. The captaincy just tends to get treated with it's like the band, right? You've got the chair system. You try out and you get first chair, second chair, third chair. Isak is a great trumpet player. He's just not going to get first chair while Saka and Haaland are in the band is the thing.
I had him last season for a lot of the year, and he's a fantastic player. He can be somewhat. Is it him or the rest of the squad? Like sometimes I don't know if it's his fault, right? Like if you plugged him into, Man City or something like that. I mean, he scored 20 goals last year. I mean, it wasn't like he had a bad season by any stretch, but it sometimes feels like he's not like they don't kind of run the team through him, right? That's sort of not really the style. Like, right. I mean, I don't know, but it's actually I think it'll be really interesting with Hall as maybe a little more of a kind of maybe driving the attack a little more. Like, I mean, obviously he's on the opposite side of the pitch of Trippier when Trippier was starting for them, but like to me, it felt like it was a very kind of full, like almost like a kind of Liverpool style, kind of like fullbacks and winger sort of system, and then he kind of hoovers up chances and balls in and up in the box.
I'm about to drop all of my Newcastle players after you talking about Lewis Hall as Andy
Provider.
Robertson.
Hey, I mean, well, yeah, Hall and Holland Gordon, though, that could be a nice little link up possibility. Okay, here's a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I look at your squad right now.
Yeah.
You've still got Big Ben.
They're still there.
Stokes Ben.
Nothing
we got
We're
20 minutes to go here, but
I know. I need
yep,
to just
yep.
be sitting in silence, staring at my phone in order to get
I
anything
know.
done.
It's actually kind of
But
nice to do this. Because we've been talking for 70 minutes now.
no.
Amazingly, it feels like we've been talking for about 5, and it is helping me to where I'm talking. I don't know if I'm talking through my anxiety. Like, I don't know if I feel less anxious, but at least I'm talking past it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like my mouth is going faster than my anxiety can keep up. Which I think is a plus. So, who in your squad that you don't have right now? It doesn't matter what position they are. Who do you like? Kind of wish you had? Like, is there somebody that you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I wish I could like fit them in, or I might regret going with whatever
Mhm.
Jota over in Cuckoo. I don't know, whatever. Like, is there some player that you're kind of on the fence about?
Yeah. Mournfully. I mean, to state the obvious, not worth mentioning, but Salah, I guess.
Sure.
Guardiola, it seems a little irrational because I fully support the argument that City's defense is just not strong enough. It certainly won't be without Rodri, and it still isn't strong enough with Rodri in the team. And there's some interesting stuff on The Athletic about them predicting that City will probably leak even more goals this season because they're a little too, they've grown a little too risky in their passing, and they push so high up the pitch. They're not really good at plugging holes once teams actually spring the fast break counterattack. So there are many outs to the desire to have Guardiola. And I feel like Crystal Palace has been one of the big preseason teams.
Yeah.
I feel bummed that I'm not really. I have Henderson in goal, but Munoz and Eze, two very fun people to have going into the fantasy season. I'm a little bummed about that. What about
I know.
you?
I feel the same way, actually. Henderson versus Flecken, I think, is quite close. And I know you're genuinely quite down on Flecken. But I think it's close. And I guess, like, over 38 weeks, I probably prefer Henderson. I guess I see Flecken as I like him a little more up through my first wild card, just on a fixture play. But I think it's tight. I really promised myself last year that I would not rotate keepers again. That I don't think it actually works, and I think it's a recipe for high stress. It feels like it's gotten really out of style, doesn't it? I feel like you see a lot less of it than you used to.
You see it like on Twitter. Somebody's like, they rotate very well, and it crickets after that comment. A couple of questions. Nick asks, is it worth it to leave 1.5 in the bank to turn Solanke into Ollie Watkins, or just use your whole budget and wild card early if Ollie starts to do the thing he did last season? So Ollie Watkins, haven't mentioned him at all. This kind of goes hand in hand with Joe on the chat has a more specific question, but I think it's like the idea of the thoughts after game week 1. How much thought have you given to life after game week 1? And then there is that man, Ollie Watkins. Have you thought about him at all?
Yeah, I have, and I just can't fit him in right now, and I hate it. I mean, actually, him and Palmer are the two. I mean, I think they're the next generation of great England players, right? And we saw that, in the Euros, in the Euros. But I just feel like they may have to be first wild card players. I mean, I actually think Isak versus Watkins. If Watkins had done a full preseason, I think that would have been much more of a debate, right? And I think the fact that we just don't think that Watkins is going to be kind of at full strength right at the start is and also I mean, like, West Ham away is fine. Like, West Ham away is actually a pretty good fixture for him, but again, it's because we don't have full strength Watkins. I don't feel as good about it. And then Arsenal at home in game week 2 is okay, but it's not a great fixture, right? And it's sort of, and so it's like I guess I just feel like I can go at least a couple weeks without having to really
Yeah.
worry about him.
Here's a softball.
Okay.
Joe wants to know, after week 1, what are your thoughts on Malo Gusto? Now,
I
before we say what has to
have
be
not
said,
thought about him at all. Yeah.
Malo Gusto had an insanely good Euros for Spain. Insanely
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
However, I uh, anyway, I'm not seeing it. It's almost more to do with the Chelsea squad. No shots at Malo Gusto, but this Chelsea defense looks like it's poised to be an absolute, just kind of a clown show for a while. Would be my prediction. It might not be true, but that's my prediction.
Yeah, I mean, and you might be right. I think even if it is a clown show, I still think they could score goals, and that's why I feel okay
Sure.
about having Nkuku.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. I think
What is?
Chelsea. Well, yeah, that's
Sorry,
right.
I didn't mean to interrupt
Hmm.
you, but
Yeah, you're fine.
what does Chelsea or what is Gusto's price? Is it 5 million? Yeah, it's
Good
5 million.
question. Yeah.
5 million. Yeah, 0.5 too much. It's funny actually. There's quite a. It's probably just because they play Man City in game week 1 that I haven't like even looked at defenders for Chelsea.
Yeah.
They also like I mean with under Poch they kind of rotated a lot too, and so it's
Yeah. Couldn't
I
get like a real
yeah.
center back pairing together.
Mhm.
Thiago Silva's gone now. You've got like Badia Shield is
Yeah.
he feels like a little raw still as a central
Yeah.
defender.
I mean
Levi
Disasi.
Caldwell, I really like, but
Yeah.
I don't think he's strong enough to carry a whole back line on his own, like
I
a
think
Van Dyke.
yeah, I think there is value here, but just not until we know what that again, first wild card, right? And I think yeah, so I think I'm kind of with you. I'd say if there's one player that I really wish I had for game week 1, it would be there's I mean I guess it would be Cole Palmer, honestly. Just because I love him and I think he's just an incredibly consistent player, but I just don't know how you can start with him after the late start and then playing Man City at home. It just doesn't feel like it feels slightly suboptimal. What I wish is I had 0.5 million on my bench so that it was easier to move Son or Saka to him. That would be the one thing.
Yeah.
But I just
All right,
can't.
we're gonna
get
do
there.
the 10-minute sort of klaxon in 3
Okay.
minutes,
Yep.
and then we'll
Let's see
try to
if
get
there's
like right with
any.
the Lord here.
Yeah. Let's see if I can find any
Um,
other news to share. So we got the Garnacho benched is a rumor that's coming from Manchester Evening News is a possibility. So again, this is something you and I talked about on Sunday's pod, which is
mhm.
he didn't start the
Community
the
Shield.
Community Shield. I mean, like even though he scored a goal, like it may be that they just really like him and that kind of I always use him. There's got to be a more updated version of this, but like as the Berbatov kind of super sub, style player.
I think it must have something to do with his fitness, is my feeling.
Maybe,
Um,
maybe you don't think he's hit the Bowflex enough. He's got to,
Not enough
yeah,
bow. Too much flex,
hmm
not enough bow
too much flex, not
at
enough
all.
bow. Makes sense. I knew you were going to say that. All right, so that's where we are. Yeah, so we got
Dork Lord,
12
got a
minutes to
question from
go.
Dork
Okay,
Lord.
go ahead.
We got 2 minutes before the 10-minute klaxon. Dork Lord
Okay.
says, start Smith Rowe at Man United or Rogers at West Ham. So this is kind of like my dilemma with Rogers is like, well, if I get him, am I like obliged to start him? A little bit of the
No.
Oscar Bob phenomenon of like, I know I have a limited time with this person and I need to make the most of it. Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah, I was thinking a little bit about. I was looking at Mikhail Takvum's the transfer
Transfer
algorithm guy,
algorithm.
and
Yeah.
he shared his squad earlier today. I don't know if you saw that,
I
but
did.
it's
Yeah.
and one thing he talked about, he's actually been kicking around a couple different keeper options, but the one that he actually started with was Areola, and basically his rationale was just that the new manager has a reputation for being defensive minded, and
Yep.
that he thinks that'll be kind of a priority for them in a way maybe it wasn't
Yeah,
under
that's
Moyes.
fair and not entirely speculative, but Lopetegui doesn't have like the best tools to work with in this
Totally,
moment.
but just in the context
Yeah.
of Rogers versus Smith Rowe. I
Yeah.
mean, Smith Rowe is. I mean, I guess they're both in theory playing as a number 10 this weekend. I actually like. There's a part of me that wants to have Smith Rowe right away. It may be that I move. I think I'm going to stick with Nkuku, but it's but just because it's.
Okay,
I
let's
just don't want to make a
all right,
10-minute. I don't want to make a
okay.
10-minute move here. It makes me a little too anxious. But I want you. If you're
When are we gonna lock
yeah,
in?
ten
When are
minute
we gonna do
Claxton is
that?
on. I'm locked. I think I'm scared to change anything. I think
Yeah.
I'm gonna lock it in. And just not make any changes. Let me take one last peek, make sure I didn't do
Yeah,
anything
I think
stupid.
okay, I'm just
Didn't
gonna say
accidentally activate my
I think I'm
like
locked too.
triple
I want you to throw
captain.
your team up on the screen one last time.
Okay,
I'm calling it. I'm locked.
you're
Uh,
locked. Okay,
I'm
good.
locked.
Okay, good. All right. So this is Josh Landon's squad. You can see my Michigan State colors there. I actually went
Go white.
to
Go green.
I went to the brand page for Michigan State, and I did get the
The
hex
Pantone.
code, the Pantone
Oh,
for
nice.
that's MSU. That's MSU
Yes, it is
green.
a hex, right?
No, they
That's
actually
fine.
have two greens. They have the that, and then they have the kind of old school Kelly green that you and
Mm,
I grew up with. Which I have to
mm-hmm.
admit, I actually kind of prefer, even though I know it's not as like intimidating of a color. It's a
True.
softer green, but I think it's a little more fun that like old. Anyway, we
Yeah.
got 9 minutes to go until the deadline. I can't be talking about Michigan
Hex
State's
codes.
hex codes. Yeah. So so Winks, Robinson, Bellis, my favorite. Oh wait, why do I have him as? Oh wait, no, that's right. For a second, I thought for the backup keeper, I was like, do I have the Crystal Palace backup keeper by mistake? But no, I don't.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
It's just I have Flecken's backup. To me, I think you should. I guess the idea would be if a match gets canceled, then maybe you want to back up from a different team. But I think what's more likely to happen is that is that the keeper gets sick or something like
Yes.
that, and the backup.
Yes.
That's a
A
more
person
likely
gets
play.
COVID, not a whole town.
Exactly. So I've got Flecken. I'm sticking with Hall. He might be my first transfer, right? Like I think
Mm-hmm.
I I don't. To me, I don't know that I'm planning to play this like hold five transfer style. I may make transfers as soon as between game week 1 and game week 2, right? If I see somebody who looks like let's say like Smith Rowe looks absolutely fantastic in Friday's match, he may come in for me in game week 2, right? I don't mind making a move like in Cuckoo out right now. And I know the logical thing then would be, well, why don't you just get Smith Rowe right now? And
Mm-hmm.
I guess you could play the other projection game, right? Which is that Nkuku plays out of position on Sunday and looks terrific, and everybody's like,
What
wait,
if?
why don't you have? We all have Jota as the out of position player. Why don't we have Nkuku as the other out of position midfielder, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, there's a good chance he lines up as forward on Sunday, right? And in
Mm-hmm.
which case he'll
Yep.
certainly get some chances. Um, so yes, I've got Saliba, Kwanzaa Hall, pretty weak defense, and that's a sacrifice I had to make to have what I think is an incredibly strong midfield in Sun, Saka, Jota, and Kuku, and then Holland, Isak, and Wood are my front three. Going with Captain Holland, I think it's fine if you want to go with Isak or Salah if you have him, but Holland to me is the upside, like he's just like he has one extra like standard deviation of return above every other potential captain pick, right? And I think that's true. Maybe outside of Salah in any given week. The other one thing we haven't talked about, Brandon,
Mm-hmm.
is Trent, and I guess like there is a part of me in like the last 24 hours that has you and I are actually somewhat rare, I think. I'm seeing Trent in like every squad now, like over the
Mm-hmm.
last couple of weeks. You and I have not really been on the Trent train. Um, and I guess if there's one person who I don't have, who it's way too late for me to even try to figure out how to fit him in.
Yeah.
If there's one player that I don't have who could really go off and hurt us, I think Trent might be that player.
You're gonna to get Trent, you have to give up a player of effectively of equal value in terms of FPL points, is my
Yeah,
feeling.
yeah.
And that's
Probably turn
really
Saka
yeah.
into a 7.5 or something like that.
Yeah. So that's a gamble, which could pay off for Trent owners.
Yep.
Speaking of defenders, Quixotic Fool asked Guardiol or Saliba slash Gabriel. So City defense, strong guy in Guardiol versus Arsenal defense. And Arsenals have a better defense and
Yep.
they have better game week 1 fixture for sure. Wolves is, I think, a very nice fixture for Arsenal defense.
Yep.
So that to me just feels like very straightforward. Go with I. The only way I'd have Guardiola on my team, I think, is if I could do Guardiola plus an Arsenal defender. Arsenal defenders just feel more
Yeah.
the imperative.
Yeah, that's what I had until last night, late, like literally 1 a.m. last night. I just looked at it and I thought I don't have enough firepower in my midfield to feel comfortable. And I think especially once we found, and I know we're kind of repeating ourselves now, but I think it's important because it has been 90 minutes. We're 5 minutes away, but the fact that Rodri is out for the weekend and maybe next week too. It's not clear, right?
Yeah.
Is enough to make Gavardia, I think, a less appealing asset. I mean, do you agree with that? Like, do you think that Rodri affects
Yeah,
him
I
at
do.
all? In terms
I,
of,
I
yep.
I do. I do agree with that. And I wonder if Rodri it's also part of like his off the field stuff with Spain, where he's having some disciplinary issues with UEFA, and Man City just might be trying to just like let that cool off a little bit. He has to
Yeah,
serve a
yeah.
Nations League ban in the first
Okay.
international break, which in a sense, like Rodri coming back from the international break, full vacation slash rest. Interesting to see how Man City react to that and how strong they look after the first international break. All right, we've got 4 minutes until it's pencils down.
Yep. Yep.
We're here, guys. It's your last opportunity.
Yep.
If you have any questions, drop them in the chat. What who give me your top four at the end of the season? Who wins the league?
My top four teams. How
Yeah, who
about why don't we do
finishes in
why
the
don't we
top
do
four?
how about this? How about top four FPL points for the
Okay.
season? Yeah. Let's say I'll say Holland first. Boring answer, I know. I'm gonna put. I mean, I haven't given this like any thought, but like
Mhm.
I actually think that that Son could have a really fantastic season. Maybe his his last
Mhm.
big season, but I think Son could have a great season. I really think that the addition of Solanke helps him a lot
Mhm.
as a player. He just doesn't have to do it all anymore, the way he felt like he did at times last season. Let's put Saka third and Isak fourth. That's a very boring list. Actually, that doesn't include Palmer or Watkins.
Mhm.
I'm going to redo this.
Okay.
Holland, Watkins, Son, Palmer. That's my top four.
I think Palmer and Watkins are gonna have a bit of a decline over
Okay.
last season. I do.
Okay. Little decline. Okay.
I predict Holland, Salah. Uh, I want to put a defender in here. Holland, Salah.
Gavardiol could be him.
No.
With Pep, you just can't trust any defender to actually get more than like 32 starts, right? And so that knocks their like total points potential down a
Okay.
little
Here,
bit.
I am suddenly like all about Havertz. I'm having a little FOMO with Havertz. I think
Mm-hmm.
Havertz will be fourth, and then the third, let's say Isak. So
Okay.
I'll go Holland, Salah, Isak, Havertz.
Okay, I like that. The got a couple. Matt said he's taking a crazy punt on Morgan Gibbs White. I don't think it's that crazy. I think that Morgan Gibbs White is a potentially really strong pick. I would consider him even more serious if I didn't have Wood in my squad already. Tim and Two Forest feels like too much, but I just read an article last night with Gibbs White where he's talking about one of his. I know you hear this a lot with midfielders, but he said one of his big goals this season is to score more goals. That's like his priority. So I think that we could see a little bit of a step up from him. Mike DePietro asked about snacks for the game, and I am planning to go to the gym for the first half of the match to burn off some anxiety while I watch,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'm going to come back and make myself a gin and tonic. So that's my plan.
I have no idea. I haven't even had lunch yet. It's 1:30. I basically
Mm-hmm.
had to do as much work as possible until noon
To
when we
do this.
started. And I'm like, I haven't eaten anything.
Yeah.
So I just need food.
Yeah.
So I'm
We
going to
got
go forage over the next 90
minute.
minutes.
It's almost scary to even look at
Yeah.
this, but let's see if we have any final leaks that came through. I'm going to my little FPL in the know channel.
Shout out to Ian Stimson. We love you, buddy. I hope everything's well.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks so much. If if you're listening to the stream and you haven't subscribed to the pod yet, hit the subscribe button so that you can find out what's going on. It also helps us just to pop up on those algorithmic
Let's
features
not
more
end on a
often.
pitch.
No, I'm just, but why not? We always do. But yeah, good luck, Brandon. Do you, so you feel good? You didn't make any changes?
I
I'm
feel
a little
good.
surprised you didn't make
I
any
feel
swaps, but
weirdly good. I mean, this is how
okay.
you and I operate. Is
That's right.
we can give each other sound advice, but neither of us are going to take it because almost
No,
solely because it comes from the other one.
I know it's really horrible. I don't know why.
All right, there it is. My
Yeah,
clock just ticked over to
mine
1:30.
too.
This
We're
is it.
here. Wow. Okay. Well, this was the stream. I
Yeah,
really wish everybody the best of luck.
yeah,
I'm honestly glad that I don't feel any anxiety now.
yeah.
Right. I mean, like, yeah, we'll see what happens, but like, I'm actually glad I don't have to make any more decisions for a while, for a
Absolutely.
week. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, guys. Best of luck. We'll see you on the Discord. Check out the live match channel, Match Live. I don't remember, Match Day Live channel. That's
Yep.
where all of the discussion is during lots of fun. And if you're in Last Cheater Standing, that's also like one of my favorite Discord channels live during the matches.
Yeah.
We've got lots more in store for the whole season for you to make
Wow.
it worth your while to support the cheaters.
But let's not end on
Uh,
a pitch, Brandon. So I will say that Delict does not start for Man
Emil
United
Smith
tonight.
Rowe is going to terrorize these fools.
Yeah,
Let's
and
go.
Mason Mount starts. I don't. It's funny that those are paired together in the same tweet. I don't think Mason Mount's going to start as a center back, is he? But
Yeah.
so
Carrie's in
that's
the chat. What's
interesting.
up, Carrie?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Hey, Carrie, our favorite
Gin and tonic
gin and tonic
drinking
drinking
veterinarian
dentist.
just logged
Veteran.
on.
I always say dentist, and I know. Yeah.
I'm sure she cleans
Um,
teeth for dogs.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's true. All right, well, let's. I guess you and I have to go do some
We have
actual
to go
work before this.
live a life, but this
Yeah,
has been fun, Josh. And
yeah. Likewise.
good luck. I'll
Good luck,
see you on
everybody.
Sunday.
All right, sounds good. Bye. Are we
Trying to
done?
end this.
Nope. Says. Oh, we're still on.
Okay.